So this past week, I got to do one of the more amazing experiences of my life. I got to go backpacking in the mountains of Wyoming, the Grand Tetons to be exact, which are a beautiful mountain range just south of Yellowstone. And the backpacking in the mountains was itself amazing and beautiful. There were wildflowers, beautiful, majestic mountains. But what was really the motivating factor to get up there to that specific mountain range was the fact that the eclipse was passing right over while we were backpacking. So we got to see what they call totality from a mountain pass at about 10,500 feet. And I think we chose the right place because when we got there were 4 NASA engineers who also chose that place to view it. And what we got to see, the eclipse, was just absolutely amazing, beyond words, really. Since we were on that mountain pass, we could see both east and west, and we could literally see the darkness of the eclipse coming across the plain to the west as it was preparing for the eclipse. We could watch our shadows begin to do some crazy things as you got close, which I don't understand how or why. And when the eclipse was over us, there was literally 360 degrees around us of a beautiful sunset look to the skies. And one of the more surprising things, and of course it makes sense, was how cold it got. Because as you lost more and more of the sun's rays, it got pretty cold up there on that mountain. But as I talk about the eclipse, my words always fall short. I can describe the effects of it, but if I was to try to describe to you what it's like looking at it, my words would fall short. Because my own words can't fully grasp the beauty of it and cannot in any way portray the wonder. And in today's gospel, we have a very similar thing that happens. Jesus is speaking to his disciples in Caesarea Philippi, and he asks them 2 questions. The first is, who do people say that I am? So he's asking, what are all the other people? Who do they say that I am? And they say, well, some say John the Baptist, Elijah, or even Jeremiah. And that's because the works that you're doing look back to the works of the great prophets. But then after this, Jesus asks them, but who do you say that I am? And Peter speaks up. You are the Christ. And let's stop right there. What is Peter saying by making this statement? At this point in the ministry, we're about halfway through the Gospels, so Peter has seen some pretty amazing things. He's seen the curing of people that are ill, the healing of lepers, the multiplication of the loaves and the fishes. As we heard a few weeks ago, the walking on water. And so because of all these things, he makes a reasonable conclusion. That you are the one who is prophesied about in the Old Testament. You are the Christ. And just like from the effects of the eclipse, I could make the logical conclusion that I was, in fact, viewing an eclipse. Peter sees the actions and effects of Jesus' ministry and concludes that he is the Christos, the Mashiach, the one promised to come. But the words that follow this are beyond reason. And even he doesn't fully understand, because we know if we were to read the subsequent verses of the gospel that follow this one, he tries to stop. After he's made this amazing exclamation, he tries to stop Jesus from fulfilling his mission. Because what follows him calling Jesus the Christ is this phrase, the Son of the living God. And even though Peter could make a conclusion that Jesus is the anointed one, that phrase, the Son of the living God, is one he could not reach through reason. And we know this because Jesus looks at him and tells him, flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. It is only a grace-filled moment that allows Peter to make this acclamation. For by saying this statement, Peter is making a claim to something that is even infinitely more beautiful than Jesus simply being the Christ. He is making the claim that Jesus is the divine Son of God. And you would think that in response to this, Jesus would be like, finally, someone made this connection. I know it's my Father speaking through you, but please tell everyone this wonderful and amazing truth. But is that how he responds? No. He charges his disciples to tell no one. Why? Because while the revelation that Peter makes is profound, the reason why Jesus became man is not why the average Jew would have thought back in that time. Because most in Jesus' day were expecting the Christos, the Christ, to save the Jews from Roman power, from earthly, in a sense, bondage. But Jesus actually came to free us from something much greater, from sin and death. Something that is only possible and can only happen by God offering himself. And thus Jesus wants this amazing truth revealed to Peter by the Father to be realized through the cross, through him saving humanity from their sins. My brothers and sisters, today's gospel reading is truly incredible. One in which Peter's own words fall short, because it is only the Father speaking through him that allows him to make this wonderful acclamation. And even then, he doesn't even fully understand what he is saying. For we can never separate Jesus from his mission in which he came to free us from sin and death and restore us to eternal life. A truth that we can never come to by reason, but one that we can only reach through faith. And thus, if Jesus was to ask you this day, who do you say that I am? Will you allow the world to dictate who Christ is, knowing that they will either always fall short, or maybe even be wrong, or maybe even deny his existence? Or do we allow the Father to speak through us, to tell us the truth? That Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, the second person of the Holy Trinity, and he came into this world to free us from sin and death.